What's up, buddies? So, I really enjoyed the stream game against Many Voices. It turned out to be a little kind of harder than I expected to get myself in the mindset of like giving tactical comments on the game as I was playing. So, I thought that I would follow it up with just a little video with some comments on how I played and some of the tactics involved and some ways in which I kind of second guess some of my moves after the fact. So as a general comment, well, a couple of general comments. One is I think the kind of general strategy that I approached in the game was sound, and kind of the directions that I was coming from with my units and stuff were pretty much the right ones. And obviously it worked out. Of course, it worked out definitely in significant part because I got some really lucky critical hit rolls that, did some serious hurt to a couple of his mechs, especially his custom Shadowhawk. And if those hadn't happened, those mechs could have really created a lot of trouble for me. It definitely was not foreordained that I was going to win with the battle plan that I had. Many Voices had a very powerful force. He had a command console, which is a significant advantage. And he had quite a lot of medium lasers on those two medium laser boat mechs. So those were like super hard, deadly mechs. I think there are ways in which I could have done some things to ensure my victory, and instead part of my victory was due to some luck factors for sure. A second general comment is a thing that I notice about my Battletech game is a lot of games I'll play pretty precisely for the first few turns, and then I start to get sloppy. That's especially true, I think, in games where I start winning early. It usually doesn't come back to bite me in those games when I start winning early, but honestly, as I kind of alluded to in my conversation with Many Voices during the game, I think that's because usually my luck holds. So I definitely made some boo-boos later on in this game, and I'll talk about that. So what were some things I did right? Well, I definitely think that the way I moved the Battlemaster and the Bulldog early in the game was pretty optimal. Kind of bringing them down from the northeast in a straight line. The trajectory that I sent them on, I think it was good because it gave them the option to either take cover in those woods and fire in on the objective area if I wanted to use them for more long distance attacking, or to just rush right into the objective area. And the other thing that was really good about this was the Bulldog was able to get into this position in the top corner of the hexagonal objective area that was kind of a unique spot because it gave it cover. That is, it was out of line of sight from everything else in the objective area except for the three adjacent hexes. So that made it difficult for him to focus a lot of fire on the Bulldog. And the Bulldog ended up surviving for a big part of the game, which I wasn't sure it was going to. It was definitely not the most resilient. It was kind of the weakest unit that I had defensively because it's only got kind of like modest armor and low speed, but it still stuck around for a long time and helped out with the objective points pretty well for most of the game. And this is a little bit more of a no-brainer, but the position of the Marauder 2 and the Partisan worked out well, I would say. It might have been nice to put the Partisan in the same hex with the Marauder 2 so that it would kind of get a little bit more protection from the Marauder 2. Another thing that might have been nice would have been to actually angle the Partisan with its back to the hill, because then, when he tried to come around with his light mechs, which of course he did very successfully, that was one of the best things he did in the game, it would have been taking hits partly to the front side, which is what you want with a vehicle. And normally there would be a significant danger to having the Marauder 2 in partial cover behind these level 1 hills, because he has an Os Scout that he can jump up and kick the thing in the head and get in head kicks. But as I mentioned during the game, because we were playing with edge and I gave the Marauder 2 a point of edge, the first head hit against it would be canceled. And so I didn't have to worry so much about a head kick, right? If he got one in, it would just use up my point of edge, and then I would be able to, get up onto the hill if I wanted to protect myself from further possible head kicks, right? I mean, the hex that would be really the most dangerous was the one that was behind the Marauder 2 and to its right side. But yeah, anyway, it worked out well having the edge to protect me from head kicks. Okay, so what about some maybe mistakes? I mean, there's one that's kind of ambiguous, but I do want to kind of call into question one of the moves I made. So in the kind of middle early game, I was in this position with my Griffin where I had done some significant damage to the leg. I got a couple of criticals on the leg of his mongoose with the Griffin. And so it was right up next to the mongoose, but he had initiative. And so I had to kind of decide, where do I send the Griffin, knowing that I wasn't going to be able to wait for the mongoose to move and get it right up next to the mongoose. Now the Griffin was kind of the best light mech hunter mech that I had, but it was also the best kind of like backstabbing cavalry mech that I had. So I ended up deciding that a thing I could do that turn was kind of commit it to going over towards the objective area and get some inferno shots against his Battlemaster from an angle where he wasn't going to be able to shoot all of his medium ranged, his medium lasers at me. But this kind of gave the mongoose and his Os Scout free reign to attack the partisan, and they ended up destroying the partisan pretty quickly. Now the partisan did still stick around long enough to have a decisive role, because it ended up immobilizing his Shadowhawk, which was a big thing in the game. But if I had kept it for a few more turns, it would have just really continued to be a big factor and punished his mechs hard. So I think a thing that I should have done was go less hard committing the Griffin to the kind of west side of the board, and instead put it somewhere more in the middle where if I wanted to, I could change direction with it and send it around to continue attacking the mongoose. Because I think like giving the mongoose free reign to attack the partisan, that wasn't my best move. Or alternatively, it's possible that just some better micromanagement on the east side of the board would have been enough to save the partisan. Like if I had turned the partisan around so that its front was towards the woods. And most importantly, maybe if I had just turned the Marauder 2 one hex face to its right so that it could angle all of its front weapons in the direction of the mechs attacking the partisan. And then it would have been able to go against those guys with a large laser and 2 medium lasers. I think that might have been, I think that was definitely a better move than some of the stuff that I did. So it's possible that I could have focused on that while still sending the Griffin in the direction I did. Maybe that was the ideal move. So as I said, a kind of problem that I had throughout the game was a bit of sloppiness. And definitely there were a couple of turns where I set myself up for a lot of head kicks. The one that the situation that you're seeing here is a prime example of this. As I was kind of alluding to when I was talking to many voices, I think part of the reason I have this problem is just that I haven't been punished for making this mistake very much, because I'm lucky enough that I rarely get hit with a head kick, and so it just kind of like, I haven't had the negative reinforcement about exposing myself to head kicks, but I recognize that this is a problem with my game that I need to work on. But even though I certainly didn't execute it perfectly in the situation that's pictured here, a thing that I want to just point out is it was a good idea, I think, for me to move the Marauder 2 up into the objective scoring area the way that I did. A lot of people, when they have a big, heavy, long-range unit, they'll keep it back for the whole game. And with some of them, that can be a good idea if they have weak armor or XL engines, or in other ways kind of weak protection. Like when I play with an Avatar G, the Gauss rifle variant of the Avatar, I will tend to keep it back for the whole game. But if you're playing with something like a Marauder 2, where it's just got a giant slab of armor on that thing, you don't want that armor to go to waste. And so after you've been kind of raining death down on your enemies for a while, once you're starting to get the advantage, you definitely want to move that 100-ton mech into the center of the battle, where the armor can start to soak up enemy attacks, and also you can use those big physical attacks that mech has to offer. So I think my idea here was good, but I should have moved it forward onto the level 1 hill instead of bringing it down where it could get head kicked. Although that said, again, do keep in mind I had a point of edge to protect me from the first head kick hit, so he would have had to hit a head kick with both of those two mechs in that turn to really get me, which was unlikely, to say the least. Okay, so those were just a few thoughts that I had looking back on the game. I'm sure there's more to think about, but I thought that I should include some further comments since, like I said, I wish I had gotten in some more tactical comments when we were playing. Thanks to everybody who watched the stream, and thanks to Many Voices, of course, for joining me in a fun game.